Top of the morning, Washington Commanders Nation. The new coaching hires continue as Washington is rounding out a full staff here in D.C. The one thing we were promised about the hiring of Dan Quinn was that despite the fact that he was the final coach hired in this year's hiring cycle, that he could put together a very adequate staff, a staff of stout professionals, experienced teachers, just like the staff he put together in Atlanta during his time with the Falcons. Washington is now added to the mix. The brother of Chuck Pagano, John Pagano, as a senior defensive assistant. Ken Norton Jr., son of heavyweight boxer Ken Norton Sr., a guy who beat Muhammad Ali in a boxing match. Three-time champion as a player, two-time All-Pro, three-time Pro Bowl linebacker. Ken Norton Jr. is your new linebackers coach, with Kerrigan staying on as an assistant outside linebackers coach / pass rush specialist. And this just breaking, Washington has hired former Buccaneers assistant David Raih as the tight ends coach. And I'm looking at this David Raih guy. He gives me Gruden vibes in the face. He has overlap and has worked with Cliff Kingsbury as his wide receivers coach back in Arizona. This is a guy whose coaching career consists of being an intern at UCLA, a grad assistant at Iowa. He played quarterback for Iowa back in the day. Texas Tech, he was an assistant quarterbacks coach and outside receivers coach, a coaching administrator for the Packers, an offensive line coach for the Packers, an offensive perimeter coach, a wide receivers coach, all of these titles under the Packers umbrella. He spent a couple years with Cliff Kingsbury with the Arizona Cardinals, and then he went back to Vanderbilt as an offensive coordinator and receivers coach. I see a trend here. A lot of these coordinators and position coaches we're bringing in have history being coordinators. We're taking a bunch of guys who've been the top of their profession before and now bringing them in as position coaches. We love to see it. Ken Norton Jr., if he suited up today, he'd probably be the best linebacker on the Commanders as we speak. You line his ass up next to Jamin Davis, I bet you he's going to get 150 tackles, because this is a dude who had 1,300 tackles in his career. This is a guy who knows what the linebacker position is about. This ain't the staff from before. Quinn and Ken Norton Jr. worked together. He was his linebackers coach back when he was the defensive coordinator in Seattle. Legion of Boom days in Seattle, when he had prime Bobby Wagner over there going crazy. It's wild that Wagner is still nice in 2024, but Washington is adding hell of experience, and we're getting coveted guys. According to Benjamin Albright and Ian Rappaport, a bunch of people were calling about Chuck Pagano's brother, John Pagano, the guy we just brought in as a senior defensive assistant for the team. This is a guy who's also been a defensive coordinator. Him and Ken Norton Jr. both been defensive coordinators before. David Raih, the new tight ends coach, has also been a offensive coordinator before. He's coached receivers. He's coached just about everything. 43 years old. The offensive side of the ball, minus Bobby Johnson, is all youngins. It's all 44, 47, 36. It's all youngins on the offensive side of the ball. And the defensive side of the ball, a bunch of grizzled vets. A bunch of vets who've been defensive coordinator before and that have taught and developed actual successful units. I know just merely hiring guys is not going to win you games. And they have to go out and prove it. They have to go out and teach and develop young talent and make it all come together. But you should be excited about these hirings. You should be excited because Ron was just hiring people he knew. A lot of them didn't have the fervor or the cachet to fill said positions when they were brought in here. Ron, if you played around the golf with Ron before or hung around the campus in Charlotte, you had a job here in D.C. If you had a family member who had a family member who had a Panthers jersey, you could have got a job here when Ron took the job here in D.C. Dan Quinn getting busy. Seattle is still trying to get a full staff together around Mike McDonald because the guys around him have to pull rank because he's not as well connected as Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn took the job and immediately could just start pulling from his contacts list, bringing guys on staff. And so far, the staff is rounding out quite nicely. Our most recent hire is our tight ends coach, David Raih, who worked with Cliff Kingsbury for 2 years in Arizona. So the two coordinators, Joe Witt Jr., Cliff Kingsbury under Dan Quinn, overlap between Quinn and Joe Witt in multiple places. And Jason Simmons, our secondaries coach and defensive passing game coordinator, worked with Joe Witt Jr. in Green Bay. Special teams coach Larry Izzo, offensive lineman coach Bobby Johnson. We retained Tavita Pritchard as our quarterbacks coach. We brought in Ken Norton Jr. as the linebacker coach. We kept Ryan Kerrigan as the assistant outside linebackers coach. We brought in John Pagano, brother of Chuck, as the senior defensive analyst on the defense. And Brian Johnson still has an undisclosed offensive title. I imagine it's going to be something of the sort of passing game coordinator. I'm excited about it. I'm already ready for the season, and draft season just got underway. The Super Bowl is 48 hours since its completion, and Washington is filling out the final touches of its coaching staff, so then they can all get together, all put their brains together and start building the draft board with the scouts and with the front office, which is headed by highly sought after executive Adam Peters. I'm excited about this. We're going to probably be getting an update on the stadium situation soon. If you haven't seen Josh Harris's interview with Chick Hernandez, they do a nice little conversation. They talk about the coaching search process, and they talk about what he's going through getting a stadium for Washington and for Philadelphia. And he talks about how they're courting all three jurisdictions, and they have a specific site set for all three. And we know the DC site is RFK, which is just reached its next step in the process of a bill being passed for them to be granted that land. So we already know where that's headed, but Washington is putting together a staff, baby, a real staff. And we're going to see if, I know we like to say it's all on coaching. I like to give the players some of that lion's share of blame, but we're going to really find out how much of it was on coaching if these guys can reach and tap into the potential of some of the players that are already on this roster that have come up short on their time on the field. Like if they come in here and Jamin Davis and Emmanuel Forbes and them boys just start turning up on fools, we're going to know real soon that, oh my, it was 1,000% on coaching. I think it's partly on the players too, but I don't imagine this staff that we're putting together here in DC is going to be forcing position, forcing scheme, and forcing things on players that they're not good at, that they don't excel at. I don't see this group doing that. Dan Quinn clearly has a type, and he's getting after it, filling out his staff, and the staff is almost complete. We are almost at completion of the hiring stages, so we can then move on to the self-scout, getting our roster right. Who are we bringing back? Who are we letting go? Who's going to be a cap casualty? Free agency, the new league year, the combines at the end of the month. Let the off-season games begin for our Washington Commanders. The season never stops when it comes to this content, and it never stops when it comes to football, because football runs this country when it comes to sports, because everything's a spectacle, down to the draft, the schedule release show, training camp, preseason. Everything is a fucking spectacle when it comes to this sport. And it's why guys like myself enjoy making content, so we can keep the streets fed with all updated information about what comes out about this team, the Washington Commanders. New tight ends coach, David Raih. Hope I'm saying that right. Could be Raih. I don't know. David Raih is your new tight ends coach. Ken Norton Jr., son of Ken Norton Sr., is our linebackers coach. Chuck Pagano's brother, John Pagano, is a senior defensive analyst. These guys had options. They chose Washington. What a new day we're in that people are choosing this place over other locations. Shall I say, The Commanders are a destination again. Well, it appears so. And Dan Quinn, I'm very impressed with your game so far, sir. I'm very impressed. Now let's make all of this shit shake and let's get some results out of these hires. But that's all I got for right now. As more news comes out, your boy will be here to report it to y'all immediately. Pull up on the live stream tonight. Mock draft live stream with my boy Josh Taylor, JTFB. We're going to be going through some draft scenarios for Washington, and everybody in the chat can be a scout. We can put our brains together, get on the clock, and make some picks. That's my time for this morning. I'll holler at y'all later. Hail to the Washington Commanders. Rio, out.